Centre Block, one of the country's most recognized buildings. It's the crown jewel of Ottawa's Parliament buildings and a fundamental symbol of Canada. Designed in the Gothic Revival style by John Pearson, it's an architectural masterpiece. A combination of immense size and scope with painstaking artistry and craftsmanship. It's reminiscent of Westminster, and yet it's uniquely Canadian. Home to both Houses of Parliament, this building is often referred to as an icon of democracy. Now this historic building is closed, undergoing the largest and most complex heritage rehabilitation project ever undertaken in Canada. An integral part of the Centre Block Rehabilitation Project is protecting and preserving more than 20,000 heritage assets. Irreplaceable works that include paintings, murals, stained glass windows, sculptures, and woodwork. Many of these heritage assets have been carefully removed from the building and stored for safekeeping. The majority are undergoing restoration work. Some items cannot be removed from the building and must remain. They have all been protected. There's a delicate balance between restoration and the need to modernize. Kate Westbury is the heritage lead for the Centre Block project. She oversees the conservation and heritage teams.
Initially, the role of the heritage team is one of very much in the driver's seat. So what we saw in the early stages of the project was removal of all of the fragile assets from the building. Anything that's very straightforward, such as stained glass, heritage light fixtures, anything that could fairly easily be removed is done first. And that clears it out of the way and allows other construction activities to take place on site.
Decisions to remove or protect are taken on a case-by-case basis. And in some instances, the risks in removing heritage materials can be greater than leaving them in place.
This is the ceiling of the Senate chamber here at Centre Block. It's plaster substrate, and it was brought in and installed post-fabrication and then finished on site. The stenciling that you see here has quite a few Tudor rose motifs, and those are a lovely nod to our English heritage. We also have other motifs and medallions that you can see from the Senate floor, which include motifs such as the Irish harp, the lion, which is simple, the passant from the English throne. So all of these harken back to our connections with the British Commonwealth and the British parliamentary system. Over 170,000 sheets of gold leaf were used to gild this ceiling. It's a treasure here at Centre Block. It's fortunately in very good condition. We've had it assessed by our architectural paint specialists, and they agreed that protecting in place was the right approach. Obviously, removing something like this could be quite harmful and invasive. And so we have essentially set up a very rigorous monitoring program for assets like this ceiling to ensure that we catch any issues early and remediate those right away.
For nearly 100 years, two massive chandeliers have hung from this gold-coffered ceiling. The fixtures are made of bronze, cast iron, aluminum, and white-flashed opal glass.
The chandeliers in this space are the two largest light fixtures that we have at Centre Block. They were cast bronze and incredibly large, weighing over 3,400 pounds, and required a lot of strategic thinking when removing them for their safekeeping. So we had to produce a pulley system, get engineers involved to make sure that we could remove the fixtures safely, as well as not harm the building in doing so. So what made those light fixtures particularly unique is that they have one piece that's cast that obviously needs to stay intact, and that large piece is the majority of its weight, and so that was quite challenging. Those light fixtures are arguably the most beautiful light fixtures in Canada. So they've been removed. Right now they are currently in storage, crated and safely in storage, and we are actually working on their conservation and treatment plans as we speak. They will end up going to a lighting specialist where they will be treated and rehabilitated, and then slightly modified to meet our lighting requirements of 2023, and then they will be reinstated here. We'll have to go through that logistically challenging process again backwards.
Another challenge conservators face is removing murals that have adorned the walls of this committee room for nearly a century.
That room originally was the House of Commons reading room, and as such, the design motifs in that space reflected the media and the printed word and journalism. And so as a result, we have a really beautiful collection of Arthur Crisp murals that reflect that, which is quite nice. And they're miroflage murals, which essentially is a painted canvas that's been applied by adhesive to the wall, which made its removal possible. If it was painted directly onto plaster, for example, it would be far more complex. So we have agreed conservation from a local fine art conservation company who came in and they removed those works of art quite painstakingly, scraped gently to remove each piece and rolled them up. Then what ends up having to happen is all of the skim coat that's still stuck to the reverse of those has to be removed in order to safely roll them, and then put those either in storage or take them off to a conservation lab for treatment. So quite an onerous process.
Here, in the office of the Leader of the Opposition, another arduous procedure is taking place: the removal of century-old frescoes. These were painted by Italian artist Attilio Pusterla in 1920.
The frescoes in the space are designed to reflect certain ideals of what a leader of the opposition should do. So they're things about justice and virtue and making sure that you're holding to the truth. William Lyon Mackenzie King was leader of the opposition at the time that the building was being designed, and he actually worked very closely with Pearson on the designs and things that he wanted to incorporate into the frescoes.
This face of an angel appearing to a knight is believed to be based on King's late mother. He chose to stay in this room when he went from opposition leader to prime minister in 1921.
Fresco is a kind of painting where the paint is applied to wet plaster, so when the paint dries, it fuses with the plaster and becomes part of the wall. So in order to restore those pieces, they had to be physically removed from the space. So just as the wood paneling creates a sort of piece of furniture in the space, those elements also have a specific place, and they have to be very carefully removed so that they can be very carefully put back into the original spaces.
Once conservation treatment is complete, the frescoes will remain in storage until they can safely return to Centre Block. There's scaffolding throughout Centre Block. It's obviously required for the work itself, but it also offers a new perspective on the building.
We are in the House of Commons chamber here at Centre Block, and the beautiful carvings that you see protected in situ here belong to the British North America series throughout the chamber. And what's really great is that we get this unique opportunity right now to see them up close and really get a sense of the high level of craftsmanship and artistry involved in sculpting something with such detail. And this is a really good example of where the removal of heritage building fabric could be quite damaging and too onerous and unnecessary at this point. So we have protected these in place along with a lot of the stonework here inside of the chamber. So we have an opportunity to do a thorough assessment of its condition, and then in turn we'll also be able to get an opportunity to do a thorough cleaning of this as well, because as you can imagine, over time the dust and debris that settles on these decorative elements is quite significant and really affects the legibility of these sculptures from a distance. And so we're getting an opportunity to clean all of that dust and debris away, and what we'll see is a beautifully kept sculpture post-rehabilitation.
Another heritage asset that will be returned to Centre Block is this beautiful fabric ceiling. It's been a part of the Commons chamber for nearly a century.
The ceiling, quite different from the Senate chamber, was actually a painted textile. It's a linen, and it was all removed as a part of our early fragile assets removal project. And that was to get it out of the building and into safekeeping so that it could clear the way for the demolition and abatement process that is required. There's quite a bit of asbestos in and around the ceiling here in the chamber, and of course if we can get that out of the way, then we allow that abatement process to take place. It was a complex removal in that we had to develop all sorts of tools and all sorts of apparatus in order to safely remove and roll that as we removed it, because of course we had some incredibly long strips of textile that needed to be removed all in one piece. So the ceiling has all been rolled on large oversized tubes, and it's been very well packaged because of course it still could contain some hazardous materials such as asbestos. And so that will be thoroughly cleaned and of course conserved prior to reinstatement here in the building.
The stained glass windows of the Commons chamber were added in the late 1960s.
So around the time of the centenary of Confederation, Speaker Lamoureux commissioned a number of projects for the building that would relate to this 100 years of Parliament. One of them in particular were the stained glass windows that were commissioned for the chamber. He commissioned the diminutive sculptor at the time, Eleanor Milne, to do a series of drawings that would eventually become the stained glass windows. What she had in mind was to create a window for each province and territory as a means to remind the parliamentarians again of where they come from and why they're in that space. So each one has the official flowers and certain symbols that are unique to those places within the country. What we know about the stained glass windows, of course, is that the glass itself comes from all over the world. And that too is a nice little metaphor for Canada as a country, that people have come here from all over the place and that they are all represented in that space.
So there's a tremendous amount of documentation and tracking that we need to do for this project. And so we've developed this link floor plan where we've assigned a number for each window and a color code. They'll tell you what kind of window it is, and then the outline to tell you what kind of installation it is. Whether it's
Meet Mark Thompson. He leads a team of conservators who are working on preserving the stained glass windows of Centre Block.
All of the stained and leaded glass throughout the building is being worked on in one way or another. For the most part, everything is being restored.
And that's no small feat. Centre Block houses 250 stained glass windows, and some contain more than 100 panels. The restoration process starts with disassembling the entire window piece by piece. It's a painstaking process.
We spent about a year on site just documenting everything, photographing it, measuring it, writing reports on it, and so on. And then we spent the next 2 years, part of the fragile assets removal team, removing all of the stained glass and leaded glass. The windows in center block, a lot of them were installed into stone reglets, which is a very old method of doing it, where it's basically just a channel in the stone and then the lead is carefully maneuvered. And then some of the windows are in wooden frames and then some of them are in metal frames. So those are quite easy to remove, but the stone reglet stuff is more challenging. We've never lost anything in transit. So for this we had to make 800 crates, and we made them ourselves in our studio. We're one step ahead of the abatement crew, and we went around and removed all of the stained and leaded glass, crated it. We shipped it to the McCoon Center at Pink Road in Gatineau. And then the studio restoration work started. What we do is we go to Gatineau and we get about a month's worth of crates to work on. We bring them to the studios. We work on them. Once they're finished and signed off on, then we return them to Pink Road, grab the next batch of crates, and we just are going to be doing this till about 2026.
The stained glass windows are now undergoing careful and complex restoration work. It includes fixing any damaged glass, re-leading, and cleaning. The lead is oxidized and can be dangerous. The windows are taken apart underwater, so nothing becomes airborne.
So this panel has been completely restored, has had all of the lead replaced, and we did the same process that we did for the other windows, where we documented on site, we crate it and transport it to Pink Road, we retrieve them from Pink Road, we get them here, we disassemble them in a bath of distilled water with different additives to help with the work, and then we reassemble the window on a rubbing that we've made of the old lead armature before we've taken it apart. This panel is from one of the House of Commons windows, the Ontario window. It's the northernmost window on the west wall. This is one of the lower lancet panels, and of course it has the trillium flower as the motif. Normally when this gets reinstalled, it's a vertical panel, but I just thought it would be better for presentation at eye level like this, where we can see everything.
Sometimes these century-old windows contain broken glass. As conservators, Mark and his team are tasked with holding on to as much of the original material as possible.
If the glass is broken, we glue the fragments back together with a special optically clear epoxy called Hextol NYL-1, and it's specially formulated for glass. It's very strong. And because a lot of the glass that did break was very, very thin, we'll often reinforce the Hextol piece with a backplate. If we need to replace a piece of glass, we're very fortunate in having a very good stock of mid-century handmade European glass that is no longer available in Canada. So we're able to match any of the base colors that have been used by the stained glass artists to make these windows. And it is a challenge to get a lot of stained glass materials. But I've bought out different studios that were closing over the years, and I have a tremendous palette of the stuff that I can use to match any of the glass. It's just a terrific collection of glass, and getting to work on them, you really learn a lot. It's tremendously educational. Like every window you learn stuff from, but these ones are terrific, and it's really a pleasure. But also just a sense of, this is a really important building. We're all super chuffed to be part of the crew, and we really feel like, yeah, we can do this, and we're going to nail it, and we're really going to do a great job, and we're just going to be responsible for it, and we're going to put it right.